I was so excited that Elvis was going to record the song, and Elvis's producer at the time.
He made some wise decisions, evidently.
Because I'd had a #1 song on it, and I said, this is the most important copyright in my whole publishing company, and I can't do that. Elvis singing my song, and it was the night before, the afternoon.
Elvis wanted her song, and the deal sounded exciting at first, like, wow, the king wants me. But in reality, he didn't really want her. She later realized he wouldn't let her keep control of it, like he wanted her to hand over the whole story she wrote. She sat there thinking, I can't just give this away, even to him. So she walked out, scared as hell, but sure she'd rather lose Elvis than lose herself.
He had called and asked me to come down to the studio. He said, Elvis wants to meet you, and he's going to record I Will Always Love You.
He said, well, then we can't record the song. And I was just heartbroken. I said, well, I'm really sorry.
This is the story of how Dolly Parton turned down Elvis Presley, broke her own heart, and made a decision that would earn her enough money to buy Graceland itself. The Queen of Country said no to the King of Rock and Roll, and today we're revealing the real reason why.
You know that we don't record anything with Elvis unless we have the publishing, or at least half the publishing. I said, I can't do that. I wouldn't let Colonel Tom Parker.
Dolly Parton has commanded country music for more than 6 decades now. Born January 19, 1946, and building a catalog that includes over 100 million records sold worldwide, with 25 singles hitting #1 on the Billboard country charts, a female record that nobody has touched. 11 Grammy Awards from 49 nominations, 3 Emmy Awards, and honors too numerous to count have followed her throughout this career. While her imagination library has put over 147 million free books into children's hands, and Dollywood brings in tourists by the millions. 3 songs define her legacy more than any others: Jolene, Coat of Many Colors, and the one at the center of today's story, I Will Always Love You. What we're about to tell you isn't just about a song, though, because this is about a decision that haunted Dolly for years afterward. A business choice that went against every desire her heart held, and a moment that proved she grasped something about the music industry that most artists figure out too late or never learn at all. June 12, 1973, takes us back to a Nashville recording studio where Dolly Parton walked in and laid down a track she'd written as a farewell to Porter Wagoner, her mentor and duet partner. The song carried deep personal meaning, serving as a tribute to someone who'd shaped her career, but from whom she needed to separate in order to grow as an artist on her own terms. I Will Always Love You came out of that session, and Dolly has mentioned writing this song on the same day she wrote Jolene, which makes you wonder what was in the water that particular day. March 18, 1974, brought the singles release, and by June of that year it had climbed all the way to #1 on Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart. The CMA Female Vocalist of the Year award landed in Dolly's hands in 1975 because of this song, making it already a massive success in country circles and already a defining moment in her career. What happened next changed the entire trajectory of this story. Elvis Presley heard I Will Always Love You and fell completely in love with it, the king of rock and roll himself wanting to record it.
Well, actually, Elvis loved the song. That was when he and Priscilla were having their problem.
Any songwriter would consider having Elvis express interest in their work as the ultimate validation, because we're talking about one of the most recognizable voices in music history here. Dolly was thrilled beyond measure, and she's talked many times about wanting to hear what Elvis would do with those lyrics, how his voice would transform her words. The problem had a name, and that name was Colonel Tom Parker. Elvis's longtime manager, Colonel Tom Parker, a Dutch-born promoter who'd guided the singer's career since the mid-1950s, had built a reputation for being shrewd and protective and absolutely uncompromising when business deals came up. One rule governed every song Elvis wanted to record, no exceptions allowed, and Dolly recalls the exact words. Now, you know we have a rule that Elvis don't record anything that we don't take half the publishing.
During that time, it's no fault of Elvis
We need to stop here and explain what that actually means, because understanding this point is everything. Writing a song gives you ownership of the copyright to that song, and publishing rights mean you control how that song gets used while earning money from royalties every single time it's played or performed or covered or licensed. This isn't about the initial recording alone, but about every instance that song generates income for potentially decades into the future. These rights hold real value, and for songwriters, they represent financial security for themselves and their families long after they're gone. Colonel Parker's rule demanded that if Elvis recorded your song, you had to sign over half the publishing rights, which meant half of all future earnings from that song went to Elvis and his team forever. A new songwriter trying to break into the industry might see this as a reasonable trade-off because having Elvis record your song could launch your entire career. But Dolly wasn't a new songwriter trying to break in. She'd already taken I Will Always Love You to #1, already owned the publishing outright, and had spent years building her career on understanding the business side of music as well as the creative side. The day before Elvis was scheduled to record I Will Always Love You, Colonel Parker reached out to Dolly's people with the terms laid out plain. Sign over half the publishing, or Elvis wouldn't record it. Simple and brutal as that. Dolly has described this moment across multiple interviews over the years, and you can always hear the pain in her voice when she tells it. The decision broke her heart. She cried all night, but she also knew exactly what she had to do. I couldn't give up half the publishing, Dolly explained in one interview. I wrote it, and I've already published it. And this is the stuff I'm leaving for my family when I'm gone. She told Colonel Parker no, and his response came just as blunt. Well then, we can't record it. That was it, finished in a moment. Elvis Presley would never record I Will Always Love You. The way Dolly has talked about how this felt shows incredible honesty across the years. I wanted to hear Elvis sing it, and it broke my heart. I cried all night, she said, describing how she apologized to Elvis himself with the words, "I'm sorry, but I can't give you the publishing." She's mentioned wondering what it would sound like in his voice, and still dreaming about it even now. What makes this story so powerful comes next, though. Because Dolly has also said she never regretted the decision, not once, not for even a moment. BBC Radio 2 heard her explain it this way in 2023. This is a rule I had, my boundary, because it was my song. She's called her songs her children more than once, putting it like this: these are my songs. They're like my children, and I expect them to support me when I'm old. Dolly doesn't place blame on Elvis or Colonel Parker. She's been crystal clear about that point. They had their business practices the same way she had hers, and she understands that everybody's going to use you if they can, which meant agreeing to Parker's terms would have forced her to share huge future royalties with people she didn't even know. Her own words put it perfectly. If I had done what the Colonel wanted me to do, I would have had to share that money with strangers for the rest of my life. This wasn't the only time it happened either, because Dolly has revealed that Elvis also wanted to record another one of her songs called Coat of Many Colors. Colonel Parker insisted on the publishing split again, and Dolly said no again, refusing to compromise on something she considered fundamental to her legacy and her family's future. Some people might think Dolly was foolish at this point in the story, turning down Elvis Presley like that, the king himself. A few folks did call her crazy when it happened, but Dolly had a vision extending beyond the immediate glory of having Elvis record her song. She grasped something most people miss. She was building a legacy instead of just chasing a moment. Nearly 20 years later, something happened that proved just how right she was. Whitney Houston recorded I Will Always Love You in 1992 for the soundtrack of The Bodyguard, and the arrangement was completely different, more pop and more powerful, with that build that showcases Whitney's incredible vocal range. The song was released, and it exploded across the world. Whitney's version spent 14 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, a record at the time, and sold over 20 million copies worldwide to become one of the best-selling singles of all time. Record of the Year at the Grammy Awards went to Whitney, and the song became a cultural phenomenon, crossing every demographic and genre boundary anyone could imagine. The beautiful part of this story comes right here because Dolly had held on to her publishing rights, which meant she earned 100% of the songwriting royalties from Whitney's massive hit. Not 50%, not a portion, all of it, every penny. Dolly has joked that Whitney's version made her enough money to buy Graceland, and she's talked about hearing it on the radio for the first time and being so overwhelmed she had to pull her car over to fully take it in. A 2020 interview captured her recalling that moment, describing how proud and moved she felt by what Whitney had done with her song. When Whitney passed away in 2012, "I Will Always Love You" played at her funeral, and Dolly noted that the song almost played at my funeral someday too, but with gratitude that her song had meant so much to so many people across the world. The financial windfall was substantial without question, but what Dolly gained went even deeper than the money: complete control over her life's work. She didn't have to answer to anyone about how her song was used, didn't have to split decisions or profits with people who hadn't written a single word or note. Maintaining her artistic and financial independence made all the difference in her career. This philosophy has guided Dolly throughout her entire life, showing up in other decisions when opportunities didn't align with her values or her vision. Princess Catherine of Wales invited her to tea in 2023, and Dolly turned it down, explaining that her schedule was packed promoting her album Rockstar, and jokingly adding, "She wasn't going to promote my rock album, so I had to say no." Offers to be a permanent judge on shows like The Voice and American Idol have come repeatedly, and she's declined them all, saying, "It's too hard for me. I just can't hurt people." She's appeared as a mentor on these shows, but refuses to judge contestants because it goes against who she is at her core. Acting roles have followed the same pattern throughout her career, with Dolly saying she only accepts parts that closely match her personality. Many early movie offers got turned down until 9 to 5 came along, a role that felt right for her, and on several occasions she's refused roles that didn't seem appropriate or would take too much time away from her music career. The pattern couldn't be clearer. Dolly Parton knows who she is, what she values, and what she won't compromise on no matter what. She sets boundaries and sticks to them even when it breaks her heart to do so. We need to get back to Elvis for a moment, though, because this story has a touching addition. Years after Elvis passed away in 1977, Dolly spoke with Priscilla Presley and learned something that moved her deeply. Elvis did sing "I Will Always Love You" to Priscilla during their separation. He may never have recorded it professionally, but he connected with that song on a personal level and used it to express his feelings to someone he loved. This touched Dolly so deeply, knowing that Elvis found meaning in her words, even if the world never got to hear his version. Interviews have captured her mentioning that if she could have one last conversation with anyone in history, it would be Elvis, just to tell him, "I still dream about you singing that song." Her album Rockstar came out in 2023 and debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, her highest chart position ever, and it includes a song called "I Dreamed About Elvis," featuring Elvis sound-alike Ronnie McDowell. This was her way of finally bringing that dream to life, at least in spirit. Dolly continues to benefit from owning "I Will Always Love You" decades after she wrote it, with the song being covered by numerous artists, licensed for films and television, and generating income year after year. Beyoncé included a version of Jolene on her album Cowboy Carter in 2024, and Dolly is credited as the sole writer, ensuring she receives 100% of the royalties, which shows the power of maintaining ownership. At 78 years old now, Dolly remains active in music and philanthropy, set to receive the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 2026, an honorary Oscar, for her charitable work. Rolling Stone's 2023 list of the 200 greatest singers included her. Time's 2021 list of the 100 most influential people featured her name, and her influence spans generations and genres, while her story has become a case study in artist rights and business savvy. The real reason Dolly Parton refused Elvis Presley comes down to this. She understood that her songs were her legacy and her security and her children all at once. Giving away half of something she'd created meant giving away half of her future. And a moment of glory, however incredible it might be to hear Elvis sing her song, wasn't worth compromising the foundation she'd built for herself and her family. Dolly put it like this in 2023, "When I write a song, it's mine, no exceptions. This wasn't about ego or being difficult or demanding anything unreasonable. This was about respecting her own work enough to protect it, even when that meant saying no to one of the biggest stars in the world, even when it meant crying all night over a decision that broke her heart into pieces." Colonel Parker had his rule, but Dolly had hers. And her rule was more important because, as she said, "It was my song." The story of Dolly Parton and Elvis Presley isn't about conflict or missed opportunities when you really look at it. This is a story about a woman who knew her worth, protected her work, and built a legacy that continues to inspire artists today, showing the courage to set boundaries and stick to them even when the pressure to compromise becomes enormous. Dolly's instincts were absolutely right in the end. Whitney Houston's version introduced "I Will Always Love You" to the entire world, earned Dolly millions of dollars, and cemented the song's place in music history, all while Dolly maintained complete control and reaped the full rewards of her creation. She sometimes still wonders what Elvis's version would have sounded like and still dreams about it, but she doesn't regret her choice, not for a single second. That's because Dolly Parton understands something every artist should learn. Your work is your legacy, and protecting it isn't just smart business. It's an act of self-respect. The next time you hear "I Will Always Love You," whether it's Dolly's tender country original or Whitney's powerhouse pop version, remember the story behind it. Remember the woman who said no to Elvis Presley, cried all night, and then went on to prove that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that change your life forever. That's the real reason Dolly Parton refused Elvis Presley. And looking back now, more than 50 years later, it's clear she made exactly the right call.